Jesse,
we're not.
What would you have done on September the 12th, 2001? What would you have done if you'd been president?
What would I have done?
Yeah.
I would have done a legitimate investigation to find out what exactly happened on 9/11. How did they know who did this so quickly like they did Lee Harvey Oswald? How quick they knew Lee Harvey Oswald killed Kennedy.
Because the people who did it were identified and we knew who they were.
Well, then why couldn't we have stopped them beforehand if they were identified and we knew who they were?
It was a failure of intelligence. Everyone's accepted
No, it
that.
wasn't. We knew before with Condoleezza Rice's memo on August 6th when it stated right in the memo, bin Laden to steal planes and run them into buildings. And more stuff is coming out now also, how much the Bush administration ignored the intelligence. It was almost like they ignored it because they wanted it to happen.
Oh, come off it, Jesse.
No, not oh, come off it. Wait a minute. No. Every war fought starts with a false flag operation.
You can't, in all seriousness, sit there and try and make out anybody.
Okay, let me ask you this, Piers. Wait a minute. Let me ask you something. How much studying have you actually done of 9/11 other than what the government's told you and what mainstream media has told you? I've been studying it 4 years.
I was editor of a national newspaper.
I've talked to people.
Wait a minute. In depth every day for 5-6 months.
Really?
So I know a lot about it.
Well,
and one
then
thing
how
I do
come?
know is
let me ask you this.
You cannot say that any member of the Bush administration knew it was going to happen or wanted it to happen. It's a ridiculous thing to say.
Ridiculous. Okay, let's talk about your BBC. I have a tape of a BBC reporter broadcasting directly back to England talking about a third building has collapsed. World Trade Center Building 7 talks for 7 minutes. All the while she's talking, World Trade Center Building 7 is still standing right behind her. It didn't fall for another half hour. Yet they were doing a pre-broadcast back to England yes, it's true,
you need to
that this building fell and it hadn't fallen yet.
If you're trying to make out the British Broadcasting Company, one of the most respected news organisations in the world, was inventing huge buildings falling over, you need to have a break, Jesse. We'll come back after the break and we'll talk about Israel and Iran.
Are you kidding me? This is a fact, my friend.
Ashley Banfield is on the phone with us again from Lower Manhattan with more on what is still burning there. Ashley?
Brian, I can no longer hear you, but I just want to reiterate for you, if we can zoom in past me, that building right there, the brown building, the tall one, is number 7 World Trade Center. I've heard several reports from several different officers now that that is the building that is going to go down next. In fact, one officer told me they're just waiting for that to come down at this point.
Keep your eye on that building, it'll be coming down.
The building is about to blow up. Move it back.
All right, guys. Sorry.
We are looking back. There's a building about to blow up. On flame. Debris coming down.
Just in the last few seconds, another building, building number 7, one of the buildings in support of the World Trade Center towers, has collapsed. This is no small building, as you can see, at 47 stories. It would stand out in most American cities.
This is what is coming over our radio. Get out of the area. The second tower is coming down.
They tell you the second tower is coming
down? Yes, it's about to collapse.
While we were on the right side, there was firefighters getting ready. They were bustling back and forth, and a couple of vets that were there, they got the vibe that something was coming down. And we started asking questions. Everybody started asking questions. And then next thing you know, there were the Red Cross representatives pacing back and forth in front of the crowd, holding his hand over the radio. And I couldn't hear what it was saying, but it was like, it was pulsed. Whatever the speech was on there was pulsed. And that means to me it was most likely a countdown. But he took his hand off at the last 3 seconds. And he gave this like heartfelt look, like he didn't just run for your life, because he didn't want to bring it on his conscience. He didn't want to go to his grave with that.
Jesus Christ.
And we only had a couple seconds to put our heads together, and it was like
the Red Cross rep was like, he goes over and he says, well, you got to stay behind this line because they're thinking about bringing the building down. They didn't say what building. They just said bringing a building down. So we're like, okay, we'll take their word for it. We'll stay behind the line. And he went over and he talked to one of the, through all the commotion, he goes over and he asked one of the Red Cross, or one of the firefighters, what was going on. I guess, I don't know if he got an answer or not. He came back over with his hand over the radio, and it sounded like a countdown. And at the last few seconds, he took his hand off, and you heard 3, 2, 1, and he was just saying, just run for your life, just run for your life. And then it was like another 2, 3 seconds, you heard explosions. Like, boom! It's like a distinct sound. It's not like when compression, like boom, 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 like floors that were dropping and collapsing. This was boom, and like you felt a rumble in the ground, like almost like you wanted to grab onto something. That, to me, I knew that was an explosion. There was no doubt in my mind.
Forward, boy. You hear that? Keep your eye on that building. It'll be coming down.
The building is about to blow up. Moving back.
All right, guys. Sorry.
We are looking back. There's a building about to blow up. On flame. Debris coming down.
Just in the last few seconds, another building, building number 7, one of the buildings in support of the World Trade Center towers, has collapsed.
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about...
Some have suggested the media were handed scripts by the conspirators.
This morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about...
But Tower 7 was still standing behind her.
It almost sounded too far-fetched. Well, unfortunately, I think we've lost the line with Jane Stanley.
I want to tell you that we are getting word from New York right now that another building has collapsed. I understand that this is a 47-story building. Do we have pictures of it? I guess that's smoke now. Correct me if I'm wrong in the control room, please. But is that smoke coming from this third collapse? Okay, that is what we're understanding, which makes sense because it looks like the sun is going down. But the heavy black smoke once again.
Look at that.
Hopefully at this point that building was empty, but I have no way of knowing that. But I'm hoping that enough people have cleared out of downtown Manhattan so that perhaps it wasn't as full as it might be normally around 5:30 on a Tuesday.
That information, of course, take a look at that right-hand side of the screen.
It's going down right now.
There it is.
Yep.
It went down right there.
The 6th grader can look at this building falling at virtually free-fall speed, symmetrically and smoothly, and see that it is not a natural process. Buildings that fall in natural processes fall to the path of least resistance. They don't go straight down through themselves.
Al Jones just saw building number 7 go down at the World Trade Center. It's collapsed now.
We've seen so much today with the collapse of number 1 and number 2. Folks standing here on the corner of Leonard Street and West Broadway. We were just sitting here watching all the smoke pouring up from number 7. Number 7 is the kind of reddish-brown building that's towards the north end of the complex. And although we really couldn't see much damage on it, there was smoke pouring out of it here for hours. And folks just kind of standing around, milling about it. And then I wasn't watching. I just could tell from the reaction of the crowd what had happened because I'd heard it already before. The gasp, the screams, people immediately turning and starting to run, even though we're probably a dozen blocks from the center itself. People starting to run away from the scene, and I turned in time to see what looked like a skyscraper implosion. It looked like it had been done by a demolition crew. The whole thing just collapsing down on itself, and another big, huge plume of gray and white smoke shooting up into the air, and then more of the smoke billowing up the street here. So that's number 1, number 2, and now number 7 that have come down from this explosion, and folks just simply can't believe it.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
I ask every viewer to come to their own conclusion about the language Larry's using and the emphasis.
Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it.
My personal response to his comment is that he was involved in a decision to bring the building down.
By mid-December, the Department of Design and Construction had leveled World Trade Center buildings 4 and 5.
Oh, we're getting ready to pull building 6.
We have to be very careful how we demolish building 6. We were worried about the building 6 coming down and then damaging the slurry wall, so we wanted that particular building to fall within a certain.
Building 7 was a 47-story high-rise, not hit by an airplane. Yet, it was the third modern steel-frame skyscraper to collapse rapidly and symmetrically on 9/11. It was a football field away from the North Tower and sustained minor damage from falling debris. Building 7's precipitous collapse was blamed on normal office fires.
I'm Steve Barish, founder and president of Barish Architects and Associates, Inc., a 33-year-old architecture planning and engineering firm. One of the things that really interested me is how quickly the Tower 7 fell. It fell within 7 seconds approximately from top to bottom. This building was built in the mid-'80s and met all the codes at the time.
From about 1965 until about 1985, most of my experience has been in high-rise, multi-story steel buildings. NIST would have us to believe that these was a typical office fire, scattered office fires, if you will, that brought this building down. Since the mid-'60s, I've tried to follow high-rise fires because they're something we worry a lot about as we design these buildings. And I'm not aware of any high-rise building that have come down as a result of fires.
May 4th, 1988, the First Interstate Bank, a 62-story building in Los Angeles, California, suffered a 3.5-hour fire which burned across 5 floors and caused an estimated $200 million of damage. It did not collapse. February 23rd, 1991, the One Meridian Plaza, a 38-story building in Philadelphia, suffered an 18-hour fire which burned across 8 floors. The fire caused an estimated $100 million worth of damage and 3 firefighters died fighting it. It was later described by officials as the most significant fire of the century. It did not collapse. October 17, 2004, the East Tower of the Park Central complex in Caracas, Venezuela suffered a 17-hour fire which spread across 26 of its 56 floors. It did not collapse. August 18, 2007, a fire broke out on the 17th floor of the Deutsche Bank building in New York, a building undergoing deconstruction after being heavily damaged by debris from the South Tower on 9/11. Originally 41 stories in height, it had been reduced to 26 at the time of the fire, which lasted 7 hours and affected a total of 10 floors. 2 firefighters died of smoke inhalation. It did not collapse. On 9/11 itself, 5 World Trade Center, a 9-story building east of the North Tower, was engulfed in flames after sustaining heavy damage from falling debris. A number of partial collapses occurred, but the overall structure remained standing. February 9, 2009, the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in Beijing was completely engulfed in flames for more than 3 hours during the Lunar New Year celebrations. The fire affected all 44 floors, igniting fireworks as it burned. 1 firefighter died fighting it. It did not collapse. February 12, 2005, the Windsor Tower in Madrid suffered a severe fire on its upper floors for more than 24 hours. This building had 32 stories, 29 above ground and 3 below. It was framed primarily in reinforced concrete with steel perimeter columns supporting the floors above the 17th. The steel columns did collapse, but the collapse events were spread over a period of several hours. The rest of the structure remained standing. May 13, 2008, the Faculty of Architecture building at the Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands suffered a large fire on its upper floors. After burning for more than 7 hours, this happened. The progressive collapse was everything one would expect, localized, asymmetric, and nowhere near freefall acceleration. "10 seconds for 13 stories to partially collapse, yet we're being led to believe a 47-story building can totally collapse in under 7 seconds. The truth is, before 9/11, the term global collapse didn't even exist. Buildings have survived fires, plane crashes, earthquakes, terrorist attacks, botched demolitions, and even nuclear explosions. Never before or after 9/11 have we seen such catastrophic failures."
The coup de grace for me was when I found out that Building 7 had collapsed later that day, and when I saw Building 7 come down. To me, the fact that it looks like a perfect controlled demolition of an intact building I mean, that's what I call a smoking gun.